Right now in a lab, a team of engineers is building a world that doesn't exist. Photorealistic environments, characters that respond, adapt, remember, entire civilizations running on code. And the people that are building them are us, humans in 2026, with the technology that we have available to us right now. Now extend that forward 1,000 years, maybe even 1,000,000. A civilization that far ahead of where we are today could be running simulations that we couldn't distinguish from base reality. What if they already are? What if the civilization running this simulation isn't some advanced alien species from another world? What if it's us, from the future? And what if the reason we feel so compelled to understand where we came from, who made us, what this place is because somewhere in the future we already know the answers? But before we go anywhere else, I want to ask you one question that I'm going to come back to at the end of this video. How do we really know it's 2026? Think about that for a second. Every piece of evidence we use to establish the date, every calendar, every geological record, every measurement of how old the universe is, all of it exists inside whatever this is. If this is a simulation, all of it was built in. The year, the history, the fossil record, the age of the stars, all of it was preloaded. We'll come back to that, but keep it in the back of your mind. That's the thought experiment that this video is built around. The last few videos on this channel have been building towards something, the genetic evidence that something intervened in human DNA at a specific moment. Previous civilizations that vanished and left almost nothing. The first cause question that runs out of language. All of it points somewhere. A philosopher named Nick Bostrom published a paper in 2003 that David Pearce, one of the most respected philosophers of mind alive, called the first interesting argument for the existence of a creator in 2,000 years. Bostrom proved that one of three things has to be true. Either civilizations like ours almost always destroy themselves before they can run realistic simulations of their ancestors, they develop the capability but choose not to for some reason, or we're almost certainly living in one right now. One of those three things has to be true, and there is no fourth option. Elon Musk says the odds we're in base reality are 1 in billions. Neil deGrasse Tyson puts it at 50-50. This is a thought experiment, so let's open our minds and let them wander a little bit. Bostrom's argument has picked up some serious momentum in the last decade because of what we're watching happen in real time. We're building simulations right now. Video games in 2026 have reached a point where certain environments are indistinguishable from photographs of real places. AI is generating entire worlds in real time. Virtual reality has gotten to the point where the brain's sensory systems can be convinced they're somewhere they're not. And every year the gap between simulated reality and actual reality gets smaller. A civilization 1,000 years more advanced than us would have computational power we can't currently model, the same way a person from the year 1400 couldn't model the internet. If any civilization ever reaches the point of running detailed simulations of their ancestors, the number of simulated minds would outnumber original biological ones by a margin that is astronomical. Which means if you selected a random conscious mind from all the minds that ever existed or ever will exist, the odds that it's an original biological mind rather than a simulated one are very, very small. That argument doesn't require exotic physics or religious assumptions. It requires only that consciousness can be simulated and that some civilization somewhere eventually develops the capability to do it. And given the trajectory that we're already on, both of those seem more likely than not. If this is a simulation, the architecture of it should look familiar to anyone who's ever played a game, and it does. Every major game runs in seasons. Fortnite, Diablo, World of Warcraft. At the end of the season, the developers reset the world. Players lose what they accumulated. The map changes. The new rules apply. A new version launches with different parameters than the one before it. In previous videos, we've covered the Younger Dryas impact 12,900 years ago, the Bronze Age collapse, the Toba eruption 74,000 years ago that may have reduced human population to as few as 10,000 people. Each one changed the rules of what came after. Different dominant species, different available resources, different cognitive capabilities in the survivors. Each version of civilization launched with different parameters. That's kind of like a season reset. World events and games drop without warning and pull every player in simultaneously. A war, a pandemic, a financial collapse. Every person on the planet gets pulled in whether they choose to engage or not. The player in rural France and the player in rural Japan both wake up inside the same event. And the developers never appear inside the game. They observe from outside. They adjust parameters. They can see every player simultaneously. They can reset the whole thing. They don't have a character running around in the world that they built. Every ancient tradition describes its gods exactly this way: observing, occasionally intervening, setting the rules, but not necessarily subject to them. And then there's the trends. A new skin drops in a game and it spreads through the player base almost instantly. Everyone has to have it. It defines the cultural moment for the season. How many times have you heard, "Hey Dad, can I get some V-Bucks?" Fidget spinners, Pokemon Go, the Ice Bucket Challenge, NFTs, that specific dance from Fortnite that every kid was doing in schoolyards across entirely different countries. These things don't just spread, they achieve total cultural saturation in a specific window and then they vanish as completely as they arrived. If you're inside a simulation being actively managed, viral trends behave exactly like content drops. Something gets pushed into the environment. The developers monitor engagement data in real time. Which events retain players? Which updates cause people to log off? Which changes produce the most interesting behavior? If this is a simulation, someone is reading that engagement data right now. And the most uncomfortable part of this parallel is that in any game there's players that are running on genuine agency, and then there's also players that are running on pre-written scripts. They behave as if they're making choices, they react to their environment, but nothing they do comes from actual awareness. The question of which one of those we would be is what simulation theory never really brings itself to ask. There's 3 things about how physical reality actually behaves that make more sense inside a simulation than outside of one. The resolution limit. In any digital environment, there's a point at which detail runs out. Zoom into a digital image far enough and it breaks down into pixels. Below that level, the image doesn't exist. Physical reality has the same thing. There's a smallest measurable distance called the Planck length. Below it, the universe becomes undefined. The math just stops working, and some physicists pointed out that this looks exactly like a resolution limit, the point at which the rendering breaks down. And then there's what happens to particles when you watch them. Fire particles through 2 slits at the same time and they create a wave pattern on the back wall. An overlapping ripple, kind of like what you'd see on water. The moment you set up a detector to observe which slit each particle goes through, the wave pattern disappears, and the particles behave like individual objects again. The act of observation changes what physically happens. In a game, the world doesn't fully render what no player is looking at. Processing power is expensive, so it renders what's being observed and leaves everything else in a reduced state until someone looks. The behavior of particles at the quantum level looks exactly like that. Reality appears to fully resolve only when something is watching it. The speed of light. Nothing in our universe can travel faster than it. An absolute hard limit baked into physical reality. No known reason why, it just is. In a simulation, that limit makes immediate sense. Any simulation has a maximum processing speed, a cap on how fast information can move through the system. The speed of light might not be a feature of reality at all. It could be a processing cap, the speed limit of the server that this simulation is running on. None of those 3 things prove that we're in a simulation, but all 3 of them fit the architecture of one better than they fit a random physical universe that generated itself from nothing. If this is a simulation, then the last 3 videos I posted make a lot more sense. The genetics video showed something intervened specifically in the sequences of human DNA controlling brain development and cognitive function. Not gradually, but rapidly. In sequences that make us capable of abstract thought. The kind of thought that asks what this place is and who built it. In a simulation, the designers can modify the parameters of characters at any point. Upgrading cognitive function at a specific moment in the simulation's runtime is exactly what a developer does when they decide the players are ready for a more complex experience. The 6 Civilizations video talked about previous complex civilizations that may have existed and left almost no trace. And if those were season resets, that would make sense because previous seasons leave almost no trace. The new version launches clean every season. The first thing that can create things video followed the creation chain all the way back to the wall where the language stops. A simulation has a clear answer for that wall. It's whatever existed before the simulation was initialized, the thing on the other side of the screen. And if the Anunnaki, the Watchers, the gods who created and reset and observed, if those are describing the developers, then the relationship between humanity and whatever made us looks less like theology and more like a studio managing its most complex game title. And what if the simulators aren't an alien civilization or an advanced species from another world? What if they're us? Think about it. We already create games where we relive historical periods. We play as figures from the past. We drop into worlds that look like ancient Rome, medieval Europe, the American frontier. We choose the place that we want to inhabit. We explore lives that we didn't live, places that we've never been. A civilization far enough into the future, one that has solved the problem of biological death, might not experience immortality as living forever in a continuous existence. That sounds exhausting. They might experience it as the ability to inhabit any moment in history from any perspective, to spawn into a life and live it fully, to feel what it felt like to be a farmer in ancient Mesopotamia, a sailor sailing across the Atlantic, or a simple life in the suburbs. Death becomes logging out. Birth becomes choosing a new character. And the experiences that feel most profound, love, loss, the first time you saw something that changed everything, those aren't random. They're what you came here for. The near-death experience research we covered keeps producing the same description from people who get close to the edge. A life review where you experience your life from the perspective of everyone you affected, feeling what they felt, seeing what you caused from their side. That's kind of like what reviewing your gameplay highlight reel would look like. And if that's true, if we are future versions of ourselves choosing to inhabit this moment in history, then the question of who's running the simulation has a different answer than anyone expects, because we're the ones running it. Follow the question all the way back and it arrives at somewhere uncomfortable. If this is a simulation, the simulators had to come from somewhere. Either they evolved naturally in whatever base reality exists outside ours, or they themselves are simulated by something above them. Follow it back and you hit the same wall from the last video. Who simulated the simulators, and who simulated them? Unless whatever was first was awareness itself, not a being that decided to build something, just existence, knowing itself. And everything that came after, every simulation, every civilization, every season reset, every player spawning in with no memory of where they came from, is that awareness experiencing itself from every possible angle simultaneously. And then there's the part that takes everything else and makes it stranger still. Remember the question from the beginning? How do we know this is actually 2026? Every piece of evidence we have for the date, every calendar, every geological layer, every measurement of the age of the universe, every fossil that dates to a specific period, every piece of physics that tells us how old stars are, all of it exists inside the simulation. All of it was built in. The scientists who measured it, the instruments they used, the mathematics they applied, all of it is a rendered environment. The universe could actually be 13.8 billion years old, or it could have been initialized with a 13.8 billion year timeline with a backstory that's already built into it and running. And there's no measuring tool we can use to tell us the difference because every measuring tool we have is inside the same system. We don't know what year it is in base reality. We don't know how old anything actually is. We don't know whether the history we've been given corresponds to events that actually happened or whether it's preloaded backstory that makes the world feel ancient and continuous and real. Every number that we've ever used to understand our place in space and time came from inside the simulation, and that simulation can make those numbers say anything. If this is a simulation and the people running the simulation are future versions of us, then the beings that made us are us. And the reason we keep asking who created us, who intervened in our DNA, who reset civilization, who's watching, the reason those questions feel urgent and personal is because on some level I think we already know the answer. Someone built this, and someone is running it. And if we're right about who that someone is, they're not watching from somewhere distant and unknowable. They're watching from somewhere right here in the future. What do you think? Again, this is more of a thought experiment, but if the year, the history, the entire timeline we've been given was preloaded into a simulation, what does that mean about everything that we know? And do you think the simulators are future versions of us? Also, I'm curious where you'd like to be respawned into this game if you can do it all over again. Nick Bostrom's original paper is at simulationargument.com. It's 13 pages that are worth reading before you form an opinion on any of this. David Chalmers wrote a book in 2022 called Reality Plus Building on the Simulation Argument from a Philosophy Mind Perspective. There'll be a link to Bostrom's study and that book below, as well as a free trial for Audible if you're interested in that. This one kind of bent my mind a little bit. I'm fascinated with our origins and where we came from and who created that person and who created that and that. I want to know where the first point of origin is. And could this be it? I don't know. And if this is it, who created that? There still doesn't answer the question, I don't think there is an answer to that question. And we'll probably find out one day when we're no longer physically walking this earth. As always, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate you watching and investing the time of watching these videos. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, like, drop that comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Until next time, I'll talk to you later.